People look at me and think I have it all. Nicholas Hayes, the golden boy of tech. The CEO. The guy on the magazine covers. They see the polished shoes, the penthouse view, the headline-grabbing success, and they assume I'm living some perfect version of the dream. But they don't see what's missing. They don't see what I feel when I walk through the front door of my silent, immaculate home and realize there's no one waiting for me. No laughter. No mess. No future in the form of small feet running across hardwood floors. Just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. What they don't know is that I tried. God, I tried. For years, I chased more than money. I wanted a family. I wanted to be someone's father. To hold a child and see a piece of myself looking back at me, not just my eyes or my hair, but something deeper. Something that said, you matter beyond yourself. But life didn't give me that. Doctors called it unexplained infertility. Cold, clinical words that felt like a life sentence. My partner back then tried to be supportive, until the weight of it all became too heavy. Until the test results and the hormone schedules and the endless, maybe next cycles, eroded everything good between us. She left, and I didn't stop her. I didn't even fight. Because how do you fight for a future that keeps slipping through your fingers? So I did what I always do. I built walls. I climbed higher. I made more. Success became my distraction. If I couldn't be a father, I'd be something. Something impressive. Something unforgettable. Maybe if I was big enough out there, I wouldn't feel so small in here. But that night, something broke. It was after a charity event, the kind where everyone's smiling and shaking hands and pretending to care. I stood in the middle of a ballroom full of powerful people and felt absolutely hollow. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. I needed air. I needed out. So I left. I got in my car, loosened my tie, and drove. No direction. Just away. The storm was coming, the forecast had said so. But I welcomed it. I wanted the wind to rip through me. I wanted the rain to wash off everything fake. Maybe even to feel like I was punishing myself, just enough to feel something. As the sky darkened and the rain began to slam against my windshield, I gripped the wheel and pushed the accelerator harder. The road wound tightly along the cliffside. Waves crashed below like the earth itself was angry. I should have slowed down. But I didn't. Because part of me didn't care if I made it home at all. And then, in one blinding flash, lightning. I barely saw the turn. The tires lost grip. My world spun. The sound of screeching metal, shattering glass, the cold slap of fear hitting me like a wave. And then, nothing. Blackness. Silence. I don't know how long I was out. But when I came to, everything hurt. My head was pounding. My chest felt like it had caved in. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. The rain poured in through the broken window, soaking me, and for a moment I truly thought, this is it. But then I heard her. A woman's voice. Close. Urgent. Hey, stay with me. You're okay. I've got you. I blinked through blood and rain and saw her face. Soaked, terrified, and beautiful in that raw, human way you only see when someone's saving your life. She touched my face gently. Don't try to move. You're safe now. Help is on the way. And I believed her. I don't even know why. I didn't know her name yet. Didn't know where she came from or why she was there at that moment. But in a world that had always demanded too much from me, here was a stranger who gave without asking for anything in return. Her name was Elena. And in that storm, she pulled me back from the edge, not just of the cliff, but of everything. I woke up in the hospital with a bandage over my eyebrow, stitches in my shoulder, and the worst headache of my life. Machines beeped softly around me. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to everything. And for a moment, I couldn't remember what had happened. All I felt was pain. Then her face flashed in my mind. Her voice. That moment on the cliffside. Elena. Not a nurse. Not some passerby. Just someone who'd stopped. Someone who'd saved me. I asked about her as soon as a nurse walked in. The staff said she wasn't family, so she'd only been allowed to check on me once. She stayed long enough to make sure I was breathing and conscious, and then she left. No phone number. No last name. Nothing. She just vanished. And that didn't sit right with me. I don't know what made me so desperate to find her. Maybe it was the fact that I owed her my life. Maybe it was because, in that single moment of chaos, she had been the calm, the anchor. Or maybe, deep down, it was something else I wasn't ready to admit. Either way, when I was discharged a week later, I asked one of my assistants to help me track her down. It wasn't easy. I had nothing to go on besides a vague location and the name Elena. But when you're a billionaire with access to half the city's resources, a last name eventually shows up. Elena Vasilis. I found out she worked at a small animal shelter on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Old building, limited staff, no PR, no media coverage. Just a quiet, honest place where people brought forgotten animals and hoped someone would love them again. It made sense. She wasn't a headline person. She didn't do things for credit. She saved people and animals without needing applause. I showed up unannounced one rainy afternoon. She was inside, brushing a matted golden retriever when I walked through the door. She looked up, startled. For a second, I thought she didn't recognize me. Then she smiled, small, a little embarrassed. "You're alive," she said simply. "I am," I replied. "Thanks to you." She stood up, wiped her hands on her jeans. "I was hoping you'd be okay. I didn't want to interfere once the paramedics arrived. I've been looking for you," I told her. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "You didn't have to." "But I wanted to." I offered to take her out to dinner. At first, she hesitated. Said she wasn't interested in thanks or charity. She had a life, a modest one, and didn't want anything from me. That's what struck me most. Elena didn't ask for favors, money, or even attention. She saved me and walked away without needing to be remembered. But I remembered her anyway. Eventually, she agreed to a quiet dinner at a family-owned Greek restaurant near her apartment. The conversation was awkward at first, but something clicked between us that night. It wasn't romantic, not yet. But it was honest, unfiltered, real. She told me she worked 3 jobs to stay afloat. That she used to be a nurse before burning out and deciding to work with animals instead. That she didn't believe in fate, but she did believe in kindness. That line stuck with me. "I don't believe in fate," she said, "but I think people are put in our lives at the exact moment we need someone to care." That night, I sat in the back of my car after dropping her off and realized I hadn't felt this calm in years. Not since before the fertility news. Not since before I lost myself chasing something I couldn't have. Maybe I didn't know what this was between us yet, but I knew I didn't want it to be over. The dinners turned into weekend walks. The walks turned into lazy Sunday coffees and spontaneous trips to bookstores she loved. And slowly, without me even realizing it, Elena became a part of my life, not in the flashy, whirlwind way I was used to, but in quiet, grounding ways that made my world feel human again. She never cared about my wealth. In fact, she hated when I tried to impress her with it. I'd suggest 5-star restaurants, and she'd counter with, "There's a taco truck on 3rd that'll change your life." I once offered to buy her a new coat when I noticed hers had a tear in the lining, and she said, "This coat's been with me through worse storms than that cliff. I think it's earned its place." I respected that. Hell, I needed that. Because with Elena, I didn't have to be Nicholas Hayes, the CEO, the mogul, the guy who was supposed to have all the answers. I could just be a man, broken in some places, healing in others. She never asked what happened with my ex. Never pried into my past unless I offered it willingly. But one evening, as we sat on her small couch, sharing takeout and watching an old black and white movie, I told her everything. About the infertility. About the failed relationships. About how I once imagined my life filled with laughter and little voices, only to be told my bloodline would end with me. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "I'm sorry," or offer false hope. She just reached out, took my hand, and held it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I think I fell in love with her right then. Not because she pitied me, but because she saw me. Months passed. We didn't define it, whatever this was between us, but it grew. And every time I looked at her, I found something new to admire. Her resilience, her humility, her ability to laugh in the middle of chaos. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I stopped by the animal shelter, unannounced again, hoping to steal her away for lunch. But when I walked in, she wasn't in the front room. One of the volunteers pointed me toward the back, and I followed the sound of her voice. She was kneeling in a quiet corner, talking to 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 4 years old. Twins. Blonde curls. Wide, curious eyes. They clung to her like she was their entire world. Something in my chest shifted. When she noticed me, she stood quickly, brushing the dirt from her knees. "Nicholas," she said, smiling. "I didn't expect you today." I glanced at the kids, then back at her. "They're adorable. Volunteers' kids." She hesitated, then knelt beside them again. "Elena?" I asked gently. She looked up, and there was a flicker of something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not shame, but vulnerability. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. "I just didn't know how." And then, in a single breath, my entire world turned upside down. "They're mine, Nicholas," she said. "And they're yours too. I just stood there. My brain couldn't catch up. Her words echoed in my head, but they didn't land. Not right away. They're yours too. At first, I thought I misheard her. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe she was just speaking metaphorically. But the way her hands trembled as she held the little boy's shoulder, the way she looked at me, it was real. Elena, I said, my voice barely audible. What are you talking about? She exhaled, sat down on the bench behind her, and motioned for me to do the same. The twins were playing now, chasing a cat in the corner, giggling, blissfully unaware that their entire origin story was about to spill out in the middle of a shelter. I didn't know I was pregnant, she began. Not at first. She told me about that night, the storm, the accident, how she stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. What I didn't know was that, before she left the hospital, she had gone to check on me one last time. And that was when she found the envelope. A blood-stained envelope that had been pulled from my coat by a paramedic. Inside was my ID, emergency contact card, and a donor confirmation letter from a private fertility research program I joined nearly a year earlier, a last-ditch effort to preserve what little hope I had. She hadn't opened it, not then. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. About me. About the way fate had dropped me, broken, bleeding, into her life. Weeks passed. Then one morning, she fainted while feeding the dogs. Pregnancy test. Doctor's visit. Ultrasound. Twins. And she was stunned. Because the timing didn't make sense, not unless something inexplicable had happened. She kept quiet. Told no one. She left town, moved into a small coastal village upstate to have the babies in peace, terrified of dragging me into something I hadn't signed up for. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to forget me either. I didn't want to trap you, she whispered, eyes wet but steady. I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't even know if you could love someone like me. I only knew that those babies were the most incredible thing that had ever happened to me. She looked at them now, playing, laughing. I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again. But when you walked into this shelter weeks ago, I knew I couldn't keep it from you anymore. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. My world, once so tightly controlled, so calculated, was now spinning around two tiny human beings with the same stubborn eyebrows I saw in the mirror every morning. I didn't know what to say, but I knew what I felt. A rush of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years, hope. Raw, terrifying, magnificent hope. They're mine. I asked again, still unable to believe it. She nodded. They're ours. For years, I believed I was broken. Doctors had said it kindly, using words like unexplained infertility, low probability, don't get your hopes up. But no matter how politely they dressed it up, the message was the same. You will never be a father. And I accepted it. I buried that dream so deep I stopped talking about it. I watched friends start families. I sent congratulatory gifts to baby showers I couldn't bring myself to attend. I smiled for photos, made generous donations to children's hospitals, played the part of a successful, fulfilled man. But inside, I was grieving a life I would never have. Until I walked into that shelter and heard the word, ours. Everything after that felt like waking up in a world I never thought I'd live in. I asked Elena if I could spend more time with them, with Olivia and Leo. Yes, I learned their names that day. She told me she named Leo after her grandfather and Olivia after a nurse who helped her through labor. Neither had my name. Not yet. But that didn't matter. They were mine. The first time I sat with them alone, I was terrified. Olivia looked up at me with eyes so impossibly familiar, and Leo clung to my pant leg like he'd always known I was supposed to be there. And I cried. Right there, in the middle of that room, I broke down. Years of bottled-up pain, loss, and hopelessness poured out of me in front of two giggling toddlers who had no idea just how much they were healing me. Elena didn't say a word. She just stood in the doorway and watched. Later that week, I took them to the aquarium. It was a small trip, one most parents wouldn't think twice about, but to me, it was monumental. Watching them press their hands against the glass, squeal at the sea turtles, ask 1,000 questions with wide eyes, it felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. A life I thought I could never have. But it was mine now. The kids warmed up to me fast. Leo would run to me whenever I showed up, and Olivia started calling me Nick in that sweet, hesitant voice like she was trying it out. I didn't push Dad. I didn't need to. That title, it wasn't something I needed to hear right away. Just being there, holding their hands, wiping food off their faces, tucking them in for naps, it was enough. One night, after we'd read through Goodnight Moon for the 3rd time, Olivia looked at me and whispered, "Are you staying forever?" I swallowed hard. "If it's okay with your mom, yeah, I'd like to." She smiled and curled into her pillow like it was the most natural answer in the world. Elena and I? We didn't rush things. We co-parented first, talked more, built something real, not based on the past or obligation, but on trust, on shared joy, on the kind of love that doesn't come crashing in, but quietly roots itself deep. Eventually, we moved in together, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. There was no dramatic proposal, no fireworks. Just a quiet morning at breakfast, the four of us laughing, and Elena looking at me like, "This is home now, isn't it?" And I said yes. Yes to her. Yes to them. Yes to the version of my life I never thought I deserved. But life, in its strange, wild mercy, decided to give me anyway. Because the truth is, I was told I couldn't be a father. But the universe didn't agree. And now, every morning, when Leo crawls into bed too early and Olivia insists on brushing my hair with her tiny plastic brush, I thank God, or fate, or the storm, or whatever force brought Elena into my life, that I was wrong. I didn't need perfection. I just needed them.